Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. So these talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m., both here in the building and live online. Hi, if you're watching us online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I am the studio community lead here at the Pervasive Media Studio. I'm a white man in my 40s with long hair and a beard, wearing a t-shirt with one of Sol DeWitt's line drawings on it. Every Friday, we throw open the door of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in our space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to anyone who's new to the studio. Can anyone who's new to the studio put your hand up? One or two. All right. Hello. Welcome. This bit is for you, even if you are a bit shy. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. And we're a partnership between Watershed, UE Bristol and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And what we do is we offer studio space, including desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And most of all, we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So just a few notes before we begin. Please do feel free to move around. We've got a kitchen back there. You're welcome to make a cup of tea or coffee, grab some water. We have a quiet space just next to this space. So to my left, that's your right, just around the corner there, there's a little room. It's got some sofas and bean bags, reasonably well soundproofed. Also got a functioning air conditioner. It's quite nice and chill in there. So if you need to take a break at any point, just pop in there. That's fine. We're not expecting a fire drill today. If you hear a fire alarm, it's probably real. The fire exits are at either end of the studio. At either side at the other end of the studio. Again, my left, your right. But in the event of a fire, one of the studio team will direct you to them. And then there are accessible toilets, including baby change, over there in the corridor next to the kitchen. There'll be a Q&A at the end of this talk. So those of you who are watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Bridget is here and will be your voice in the room today. If you are in the building, please raise your hand and we'll send around a microphone so that the folks at home and also Ruth can hear you. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at Pervasive Media Studio, at mastodon.social on Mastodon, at PM Studio UK on Blue Sky, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. We're saying this is the last talk of the summer season. We are taking a break over August, so keep an eye on that for what's coming up in September. All right, our speakers for today are Michelle Rumney and Ruth McCullough. Michelle is the producer for England for Immersive Arts, based here at Watershed. Ruth is the executive producer for Immersive Arts, also based at Watershed, but in a slightly more remote, virtual way. And today they're going to share some of what they learned from the first year of this ambitious funding scheme, what trends they noticed, what were some of the questions that emerged, what sometimes made the difference between applications being progressed or not progressed, and what advice they would give to artists considering applying in the future. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Michelle and Ruth.
Martin said, hello.
We can hear you now, Ruth.
Yep. Okay, great. I could hear myself back, which is quite strange, so I need to try and sort that out. But anyway, hello, my name's Ruth McCullough. I'm the exec producer for Immersive Arts. I'm a cis white woman in my 40s with mid-length grey hair, and I'm wearing a denim shirt today. So as Martin said, I'm based at Watershed, but I live in Belfast, so I'm dialing in from my home today. So I'm really about the round one learnings with you all today. I'll hand over to Michelle to introduce herself.
Rumney, I'm producer for England, and I'm also based here at Watershed at the Pervasive Media Studio, but I live on the south coast. I'm one of the team of Immersive Arts producers in each of the 4 nations across the UK, supporting artists right across the country. I'm a white woman in my 50s with short grey hair, wearing a black dress and an embroidered white top.
Great. So we're so delighted to be here today to talk through the learnings from the first round of Immersive Arts funding. So thanks to the Pervasive Media team, and to Martin for inviting us to speak today. So we first gave this talk at the Big Thing event in Bradford in June, so I'm really happy that we're able to share it again with a wider audience and also with the help from our BSL interpreter Sherry today. So at the start of the funding programme, we made the difficult decision not to give individual feedback on applications. This was due to the high volume and high demand on the funds, which made it incredibly competitive. So this wasn't a decision that we took lightly. We understand how frustrating that can be for applicants, and we don't underestimate the value feedback can be when you're developing new work or evolving work. So in acknowledgement of that, we committed to offering something else that we hope would be differently valuable. So we've gathered and compiled comments from everyone who was involved in the first round of assessment process with the aim of giving an honest overview of feedback at all levels. We've learned a huge amount through this process in the first round of funding that has fed into the next round, which we'll talk a little bit about. And we hope this collective feedback will support applicants to make strong applications. In May, we published this feedback online, which sort of gives an overview of the common and uncommon themes that reviewers noticed in the applications that they assessed, and giving as much detail as we can, but while still preserving the privacy of the applicants and the reviewers who took part in the process. So today, Michelle and I will talk through a summary of those learnings, but you can also read them, the detailed commentary on our website in the resources section. So we're going to talk for about 20-30 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions. So there's a bit of an update on the screen there of what we're going to run through today. So we'll give a recap on the funding round and the sort of strands of funding. We'll talk a little bit about the arts and technology trends that we saw, the eligibility, what made applicants eligible or non-eligible, and what made the difference in the scoring process in those different strands of funding. So we'll go through all that, and then we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So please hold on to those. Also to highlight, the exciting news that we just opened the second round of funding last week. Today we'll be focusing on the learnings from round one, but at the end I will recap on those timelines for round two, so people know that and the deadlines around that. But today the focus of the Q&A and the questions will be around the learnings from this round one, which will hopefully be helpful for those thinking about applying for round two. So let's get into it, and I'll hand over to Michelle.
Thanks, Ruth. So in October last year, we launched our first open call with 3 funding strands to help support artists at different points of their immersive arts journey. They are Explore, £5,000, Experiment, £20,000, and Expand, £50,000. So Explore aims to help artists with early stage explorations of immersive technologies, so experiencing immersive artworks, developing their immersive art skills and their knowledge, meeting potential collaborators and partners, and expanding their immersive art networks. Experiment aims to help artists who've already got some experience of these technologies to develop proofs of concept or prototypes and to test them with small audiences, to consider access, diversity and inclusion relevant to their project, and ultimately to experiment with immersive technologies in a way that helps them develop their own practice. And then the largest fund, Expand, helps artists who've already got an immersive project in development to significantly progress that and take it to the next stage. It might be by enhancing audience engagement and reach, or by bringing well-developed concepts to fruition with comprehensive support, and again, to consider access, diversity, and inclusion relevant to their project. So the call closed in December, and we received over 2,500 applications to our first open call. It was a fun Christmas. And this spring we announced our first cohort of 83 supported artists, 50 Explore, 24 Experiment, and 9 Expand projects. So Ruth's going to take you through some of the themes.
So we saw an amazing breadth of proposal come through in terms of the art forms that we saw. There's a wide range of things from sound, live performance, music, visual arts, theatre, dance, sculpture, photography, poetry, fashion and textiles and more. And, we recognized that it was really multidisciplinary, and the sort of genre busting nature of many of the applications. And, it acknowledged the sort of the potential for immersive art to just transcend or flat out ignore those sort of usual art form silos. So that was amazing to see. Some of the art forms that we saw recurring more within that first cohort of funding applications was sound, live performance, dance, and visual arts installations. And then on the technology side, we were really pleased to see people proposing working with a wide range of tools and technologies, from low cost off the shelf kit to the latest innovations in studio kit, as well as a number of people who were using their work to look critically at some of the challenges surrounding the ethics and the accessibility or inaccessibility of these tools. So we saw everything from what you would expect as 360 video or film, virtual reality, mixed reality and augmented reality, interactive projection, motion capture, game engines, spatial audio and binaural sound, also sensory and haptic technologies. In terms of trends that we sort of have started to indicate or saw a strong presence of through that was around spatial audio, and also 360 video and film and virtual reality had a big presence within that first round of applications.
Some applications ineligible. So we know that in this emerging field there are many versions and interpretations of the word immersive. We could talk about it all day, probably. But for this program, we describe immersive arts as art that uses technology to actively involve the audience. And this definition forms part of how we understand what's in scope for immersive arts funding and what is not. So the main reasons for applications being ineligible were proposals that weren't clearly arts-focused or artist-led. So if proposals didn't have a clear arts and culture sector focus, or were without a named artist or arts organisation or creative technologist as the lead, or if they were primarily rooted in other sectors, such as training, healthcare, tourism, manufacturing and so on, then those weren't eligible. If they didn't show the role that immersive technologies would play in their proposal, for instance, if they didn't mention any specific technologies or didn't explain why they were relevant, or if they used vague terms like, if there's time, we might also look into whether immersive technologies could be applied to the project. And they weren't eligible if there was no explanation of how the work would actively involve an audience at some point in the lifespan of the project. So for the Explore Fund, this could be a hypothetical audience some way off in the future. For the Experiment Fund, we asked applicants to tell us how they would test their early stage work with audiences. And for Expand, we expected artists to share a more formed sense of how completed work would connect with an actively engaged audience. Active involvement of the audience can take a wide range of forms. In the guidelines, we list a number of technologies that we imagine to be in scope due to the active way that they involve audiences. And we're also open to artists suggesting other technologies if they can explain how they meet the criteria of actively involving an audience. Technologies frequently found to be out of scope included projections and projection mapping, light shows, artist films, concerts and performances that did involve technology, but not in a way that actively involved the audience. So what else? Well, we received a number of applications that seemed well-shaped for other sources of public funding, like Innovate UK or UK Research and Innovation, UKRI, but that did not meet the criteria for immersive arts funding. These generally took distinct forms like business development, so proposals to start up, scale up, or pivot the business trajectory of the applicant. Whilst we hope that immersive arts funding will have a secondary benefit of supporting artists to evolve and develop their businesses, the focus for this specific funding is on the development of their creative projects and their creative practice. Tools development. proposals that were to build a specific tool or platform that would facilitate arts or other sector practice, but not a specific artist-led project. Tech for marketing. Proposals to use immersive technologies for the promotion of an artwork or experience, such as an augmented reality poster, rather than as an integral part of the creative work itself. Or funding to run another funding programme, so a proposal to design and deliver a festival or programme of support for multiple artists, so offering training, events, residencies or bursaries, that sort of thing. Proposals that included costs for academic research, such as an academic's time or full economic cost calculation within their budgets. But in accordance with our guidelines, our funding can be used to access specific facilities or technical support within universities, colleges, and independent research organisations, but not for teaching or research itself. We remain more than happy for applicants to have active partnerships with research organisations like universities, but we expect those academic costs are met elsewhere. And finally, unclear proposals. Some applicants spent large parts of their application sharing details about their personal backgrounds and context. While we welcome these insights where it's relevant to their project, there were applications which focused on this without going on to give a clear explanation of what they'd actually do with the funding. So with these proposals, the reviewers just didn't have enough information to assess their proposal.
So moving on to how projects were scored and what led to some proposals being funded and others not. So we know that everybody says this, but the standard of applications was amazing. It was incredible to see. We were bowled over by the creativity, the criticality, your innovation and ambition that applicants shared with us, as well as the breadth of art forms and stories and concepts proposed. But suffice to say, a huge percentage, or well, a large percentage of works that were not progressed for funding were brilliant, and in a less competitive field would have been eligible for funding. So moving on, Michelle and I are going to talk through each strand and things that scored well and things that scored less well. So each of the strands sort of lists some key points, which is in the commentary, and we'll give a little bit of a summary to go alongside that. Okay, so with Explore, things that scored well give a clear sense of what the funding would enable. So Explore is designed to support artists' early stages of development with immersive tech. Applications that did well often get a good sense of what they wanted to do or what their starting point would be. This could be a clear set of questions or ideas to explore, or starting to work with a potential collaborator, running a mini activity to get familiar with a particular technology, or participating in specific events. So things like that. Conversely to that, things that were overly vague or under scope proposals didn't score as well. So with Explore, it's fine to know not to know where that journey will take you. That's the point of the funding, to be, have that time to explore without the pressure to produce. However, some applications gave little or no sense of what the applicant would actually do with the funds when they were successful, or they echoed back the language, of the call, saying, they would use it to support early stage exploration with immersive technologies, but not taking that a step further to say, what they would do personally with that funding. And then in line with the criteria, so things that scored well made the case of why it would be valuable to the artist. So a clear sense of how that would enhance, transform, or add to the artist's creative practice. Applications that gave a window into why this mattered to them and why now that was the right time for them to do the thing they were proposing. And then things that scored less well had unclear or sort of vague shaping to the call. So they had no clear sense of what this would bring to the applicant's creative practice. We completely understand that funding is scarce and that sometimes, a call doesn't quite fit with what you want to do, but you apply because funding is funding and we need it. But some proposals shared really fantastic passions for what you were already doing, but then the energy would sort of drop away, or the clarity would drop away when we began to explain the use of emerging technologies, and it sort of felt like an afterthought or a bolt-on to that as well. And in some cases, people applied to explore who already were really experienced in immersive arts, and that tended to be more for production or delivery or business as usual rather than exploration, for what the fund is intended for, that particular strand. And then looking at budgets, things that scored well, budgets that were clear and appropriate, and applicants outlined clearly how they would spend the time and the funds. We didn't ask for a huge amount of information in the application that wasn't needed, but strong applications gave us enough detail to demonstrate how the proposal was feasible and within the time frame, and the budget was realistic. So on the other side, problems with budget scored less well. So sometimes people missed important things out of their budget, like payment for their own time or their collaborators' times, or suggesting that there wasn't enough resources sort of allocated to remuneration or certain elements of the proposal. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Michelle now to talk through experiment.
So yeah, with experiment, things that scored well, specific ideas. So well-developed concepts that were ready to start their R&D, their research and development, they scored well. In strong applications, there'd still be lots of scope for experimentation, discovery and learning, but a clear enough sense of the intentional purpose for the individual or the team to get going straight away. Whereas ideas that felt vague, general, generic or derivative, they were unlikely to get through, as they would just echo, or some people just echoed back to us, as Ruth said before, the words in the call out. The right thing at the right time. So there was a clear sense of why this and why now, in terms of how the proposal would enable the applicant to experiment with immersive technology within their creative practice in a new and/or positive way. While proposals that felt very early in their development for this particular strand, with little sense of what the experimentation process would involve or what value it would bring to the applicant's practice, didn't score so well. And in a number of instances, reviewers felt that applicants would have benefited from more understanding of the potential of immersive technologies before applying for the experiment strand. Applications which had a team in place or a plan of how to get there. Clarity on who would need to be involved for the project so that it could get underway. Either the team would already be in place, or there'd be a plan about how the applicant would bring a team together to meet the needs of the project if it was funded. But if there was little or no sense of who would be involved in the project, or what types of skills or collaborators or partnerships might be needed, or if there was over-reliance on the Immersive Arts team to find or to upskill the project team members, then they didn't score well. A proactive approach to access, diversity and inclusion. Successful applications explained how they would proactively work to lower or remove barriers to engagement within their conception, design, workflow, and/or their intended project outcome for a wide range of people. Applicants scored particularly well when they discussed specific provisions to practically or creatively embed access into the design, development and showing of the work, with clear outlines of who their intended audiences are. In contrast, a vague or tokenistic approach to access, diversity, inclusion didn't work. For this fund, we asked the applicants consider diversity, access and inclusion relevant to their project. And the application form had a specific question that asked for more information about what this meant in the context of the proposal. Applicants that scored less well tended to respond by echoing the language of the question, saying, "We will consider access, diversity and inclusion," rather than giving detail on what aspects would likely be important, given the idea that was proposed, and the plans the applicants had to address those barriers. A coherent approach to audience and testing. Proposals described an approach to testing with audiences that made sense for their project. They outlined a process and an ambition for testing that was feasible and likely to be valuable to their team. But if they gave little or no consideration of audience or testing, either it wasn't considered or referenced, with no clear process or no sense of how it would provide learning opportunities for the applicants, or supporting the development of proof of concept work, then it didn't score well. And finally, we were looking for a realistic approach to budgets and timelines. So proposals did well where everyone contributing to the project had their time factored into the budget at an appropriate rate, and where timelines were realistic, implying that applicants had a sense of what could be done within the time and resources available, and that no one would be exploited in order to meet the stated aims of the project. An unrealistic approach to budgets or timelines where contributors' time was under-resourced or absent in the budget, despite being written into the proposed activity, or where there seemed to be a lack of understanding or over-optimistic approach to what would be needed in terms of skills, time or resources, didn't get through. I hand back to Ruth for Expand.
Thank you. So this is our last listicle slide. So looking at Expand, which was for £50,000, things that scored well give a real clear sense of what had already happened and what was coming next. So Expand grants are designed to support work that has already undergone some level of R&D or testing with an audience, and STROM applications showed exactly what had been achieved so far. You know, they shared the challenges, the learnings gathered along the way, and provided links to documentation or early stages, so photography, walkthrough videos or APK files, etc., were really helpful in understanding how reviewers to understand what stage the project was at. And successful applicants tended to provide a clear and informed vision of what needed to happen next for their work to progress. So things that scored less well had a lack of evidence of prior activity or clarity on the next stage. We received proposals for brand new projects, which is in the scope of this particular strand, so that would have been more applicable for experiments. So ambiguity about what had been development so far. So the proposal didn't give us clarity on whether the project, what stage it was at, whether it was an idea stage or whether some level of experimentation or development had taken place. We also had proposals for work that was already completed, but with no information about what the funding would bring to it, or work that was, a bolt-on or retrofit, to a project that was already completed that didn't use immersive technology, and we couldn't really understand the value that would bring to the work. It wasn't explained through the proposal. Things that scored well, as Michelle touched on earlier, around audiences, so a strong plan to connect with audiences. The proposals included an stated intention for the artwork to reach and actively involve an audience using immersive technology, and those applications tended to give a clear and realistic outline of, what the audience experience that they wished to create and why they wanted to do that. Whether there was a main target audience and how they would plan to reach that audience, and then sort of potential audience reach or numbers. So it was sort of helpful to understand what the applicants were thinking about. There's no preference given to sort of numbers or scale of reach. It's more about understanding the intention behind the project and who and what it's for. Those that scored less well gave minimal consideration to the audience and solely focused on the creative or technical considerations of the proposal. And we couldn't get a sense of how that work would connect with audiences eventually, or who it was for, or what they might need to do in order to connect to the work. And then things in terms of access, diversity, and inclusion, proposals that are considered proactively how to remove barriers and engagement scored well, thinking about that, whether it was in conception, design, workflow, or the sort of intended outcome, of who the audience was, who audience would be. And then those that scored less well, there was minimal consideration given to that. So no sort of information on how they plan to actively engage or address access, diversity, and inclusion. And then the final points on Expand was around the team in place. So proposals that demonstrate a team was in place or could be brought together in the time frame of the proposed activity scored well. and that the team had the skills necessary to undertake the work that was scoped in the proposal. And there was a plan if potential key members of the team needed to step away, as we know things change, within timelines of funding, from writing proposals to be awarding. But we had a good sense of how that would be undertaken, and it was realistic. And then some of the proposals that scored less well, they didn't have a team that sort of matched that planned activity, so the team felt incomplete, and there wasn't a timeline to recruit the additional resources or an understanding of the roles that needed to be in place to deliver that, in line with the sort of aims of the proposal that people had sent. So that's the end of our sort of overview of the commentary. You can see, as I said, you can read the full detail of that online. There's a lot more in term, probably easier to digest with everything we've shared today. And there's also, you can see all the projects that we funded on the website. The 83 projects that Michelle mentioned are under our project section.
Yeah, so we're going to open it up now. If you've got any questions, if you'd like to ask us, we'll do our best to answer them.
It's right in there.
So thanks, that was great, and there was some things that have already been clarified, but 2 questions. One, very quickly, I missed the Zoom yesterday, and was that the same conversation as today, and is that going to be accessible?
Yep, that will be on our website shortly. It should. It's on the website. There you go. So there it is. It's on YouTube, and it will be on a page on a website as well.
Thank you. And my next question is about the diversity and inclusion aspect of it. So I did research into diversity and inclusion in technology before I could code, and part of the reason why I ended up coding, because I found that that's for me personally, the most effective way of engaging those communities. So from the perspective of how who you ended up picking for those reasons, or the people who you considered having stronger applications for diversity and inclusion, one, was that ever a consideration in terms of who the actual key parties are doing the technical aspects and whether that had any effect? And then 2, if you could kind of give an example where the person leading the project isn't the diverse community, but the way that they worded it, you decided, oh yeah, this is the right person in terms of how they articulated that they will engage a diverse community.
It's more about how you've approached it. It's not about whether we're not judging who's right, who's wrong for your project. It's your project. It's how you've approached it. So it was proposals, like we said, that were very clear in how they were approaching it and what benefit they were and what they'd taken into consideration. And if you just go on our project section, you'll read that they're very different. And there's not one way of doing it, or it's just what's relevant to your project.
So could you give an example where the diversity wasn't almost like the narrative of the project? Or was it mostly when the narrative, the narrative aspect of what they were delivering is what involved the diverse community?
Yeah, like I said, there's 83 projects on our website and they're all different. And so I can think of numerous examples where the lead artist is leading the project and being inclusive, dealing with those things, thinking about access, thinking about diversity. So it might not be the subject of the proposal itself, it's how it fits with how you've worked it into your project and right from the beginning, not as an afterthought. I think that's the basic. Have you got anything to add, Ruth?
I think it was probably the first part of that question, I think, was about, the artists and how we select them. Was that part of the question that was asked in terms of access, diversity and inclusion? Sorry, I missed because I can talk a little bit.
Yeah, no, it was just about whether the technical leads being from those community actually counted as something that you were counting oh yeah, this is kind of giving points towards the diversity and inclusion. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, as Michelle said, the teams are mixed, but we'd be looking for, authentic, engagement with those communities, and making sure that representation representation was across the teams as well, not just in who they were engaging with as well too. I think probably it's useful to touch on the balancing part of the funding as well too, and because access, diversity, inclusion is one of the key values and principles of the program, and we work with Partners Unlimited, who are Disability Arts Organisation, and XRDI, which is XR Diversity Initiative. I'm getting myself mixed up. XR Diversity Initiative. So they sort of support us to embed, processes within the funding, application, and also our training and support to make sure that it's open to people to apply to, and then we ask questions within the application around demographic information, around people's lived experience, and we use that in the balancing process of selecting the artists, to ensure that we sort of at least match population sort of representation within the program. So we'll be looking at lead artists and members of the team when we're doing that as well too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Was there a question at the front there?
Oh, yes,
Thank you. So I might have missed something at the start, so apologies if I have, but just wondering, because I know a lot of the activations are obviously to be in the UK, and that's really important. But the thing that's particularly quite exciting about this is that the work that the project that I'm thinking of applying for in mind has a strong UK activation, but there's also an international scope in terms of work of other partners that are based in West Africa as well, and in Madagascar. And I just wondered if something like that is relevant for something like this, if that feels like there's an opportunity to still obviously be UK focused, but to work with international kind of partners too.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as the lead artist is based in the UK, that makes you eligible.
Thank you, appreciate it, that's quick.
Just to add to that, like, we know international collaboration, is an important part of, sometimes how these teams are made up, and, how artists work in their day-to-day practice. So, we expect to, see that, and how projects are developed or distributed, that's not expect, but, we'll see it in some applications. And, in terms of the budget, it is a UK-based fund, so we wouldn't want to see like the whole funding being spent, outside the UK, but there can be a proportion of that is used for, international collaborations and working.
Hello, thank you for your time today. I've got a question about the timescales, because that sounded very specific in the feedback. And with the different categories, there's going to be different timescales appropriate for the amount of money. I was just wondering if today or anywhere on the website there's more detail into that.
Absolutely. So just to outline, the funds will come online early next year, so January, February. So think about where your practice is at that point and what you need then. If you're applying for Explore, it's a 6-month timescale. If you're applying for Experiment, that's 9 months, and Expand is for a year.
Great, thank you.
Hi, thank you for a very interesting talk. 2 questions. Firstly, did you come across any applications which were written with the help of AI, or which you thought were written with the help of AI? And secondly, did you use AI at all for assessment?
Well, I can tell you I didn't use AI for assessment because I personally read quite a few hundred applications. We were very adamant that we wouldn't do that. So they were all read by hand, and all our colleagues here also helped. And in terms of recognizing, I hope it's okay to say, I saw a lot that had industry-changing, amazing, the language was repetitive, and please don't use those words. Just use your own words. Be authentic. You don't need AI to write, the proposals that scored well were genuine in your own words. You're all artists and creatives. We like that. Ruth?
Yeah, I just say, there was applications that we assume were written with AI. We know it's a tool that helps lots of people for accessibility reasons and things like that. So it's not, you know, it's not a judgment call that we're making in the background there, you know. But you know, I think we're seeing AI and, you know, everywhere in text all around us as well, too. And some people were explicit in their applications that they had done that as well.
Yeah, this is for accessibility. So we don't really mind about grammar or anything. You can actually also, you can speak your application if it's easier, that you don't like writing. We've tried to make the application process as accessible as possible. You can sit and record a video of yourself telling us about your application as well. So there are multiple ways that you can engage with the application process. And it's shorter than you might think. If you've not applied yet, and you've done Arts Council applications before, just to reiterate that our application process, we've had feedback, we've tried so hard to make sure it was as accessible and as short as possible. We just want the broad outline and not you spend days and days.
We've got a couple online.
Hello, people I've never met before. I've got a question in the chat from Camille. Thank you for your presentation. A lot of the projects that have been successful in the first round seem to be live performance projects. Are these more likely to be successful in the second round?
Did you hear that?
I think that's no, I'm just thinking about it because I think it's interesting to get that sort of feedback, you know, of how that sort of is perceived. You know, there was no preference for art form when we were selecting projects, and you know, that was part of the balancing process, was looking at lived experience, geography, art form, and technology, and making sure that we had, you know, representation, you know, of what's happening in the UK at the minute in terms of those things. So no preference towards, there's not a bias towards any particular art form or technology within the process.
Any other questions from the room? Yeah.
Hello, thanks for the talk. I noticed that the budget was mentioned as far as something that did well or poorly on the Explore applications, but it was not mentioned in the expand section. I would have expected it to be the other way around, seeing as there's more funding involved with the expand projects. Could you speak to that? Was that intentional? Is budget deprioritized with expand projects?
Yeah, there was a bit I missed to clarify at the end of the expand side. I've just realized. So expand was a two-stage process. We had a simpler first stage application, and where we asked for a light touch version of the budget and timeline, and then in artists that were shortlisted, we asked for like a full production and full budget at that stage. So just trying to reduce the labor in, you know, an artist's work at that stage, you know, because we knew we were going to get a high volume of applications. So we still did score against those, but because the funding pots are set, so you apply for a set £50,000 amount. We just wanted to know how that would be spent, and that was clear within the first stage application. That sort of matched, you know, the proposal, so that the schedule and timeline, you know, sort of made sense, and you know, helped us understand the stage that the project was at and what they wanted to deliver. So that's why there's probably less feedback on that on the slides, you know, in terms of the review process, because it focused on the first stage of the application. Applicants that got through to the second stage application then were given feedback because they'd gone through an interview process and, you know, a longer process with us.
Anybody else got a question? Good again?
I know, that
That's fine. Stop.
It's all good.
oh no, and I've just forgotten.
I believe in you, Anna.
No. Someone just said, what was that last question?
Budget.
Expand and explore. It's all right.
We can come back.
Be here. I'll be here.
Well, is there anything else? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, magical microphone. Can you actually hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Sorry, a quick, tiny question. Apologies, late arrival. Does this largely cover individuals making applications, or are there restrictions within charitable kicks and organisations?
Do you want me to do that one, Michelle? So, yeah, it's in the, I don't have, we have slides with like who's eligible and who's not, but not in this presentation, but it is in the webinar that we did yesterday, which is on the website. But just to quickly recap, so it's open to artists, individual artists, technologists, or creatives, or organizations. So explore and experiment, or for organizations or creative collaborations or teams up to 10 people, and then with expand it can go up to 50. So yes, charitable organizations, you know, within those scales would be eligible.
But artist-led. So, yeah.
So without the ties, the restrictions, if you like, to be substantially positioned, just be an artist, have a great idea, come along and...
All right, I think it was... You remembered?
Great.
ADHD in action, you know, access needs. But also the question originally was how much projects are getting funded per strand? And is that more open-ended? Is there like a total... I know you said you're going to double it this... Well, the aim was to double it this year. But and then second kind of part two to that question, and you might have mentioned this in a bit that I missed, but was there any type of immersive tech that you kind of felt in some of the applications that felt like weaker examples, or kind of like not really considering the immersive tech intentionally in that way?
Yeah, well, you were right. We did talk about the beginning. So just to give you a recap, in the first round, 50 explore, 24 experiment, and 9 expand. But it's not fixed in stone. I mean, if we got, you know, there's going to be over 200 projects funded in total. And obviously there are more on the 5,000, but we haven't, am I right in saying we haven't got a fixed number of expands for this round?
It'll be, yeah, we expect this second round, which will be the last round, and we've brought forward funding to make this second round bigger and to support the demand and unmet need that we sort of seen coming through, because we got so many applications the first time. We've made that change, but yes, it'll be over 200 that we fund over the lifetime of these 2 rounds. What the makeup and number of that looks, we might follow a similar pattern to last time in terms of, you know, the percentages per strand, but it really does depend on what we receive as well too, you know, what artists are asking us for. We have flexibility to sort of with the funds to respond to that, but it's not like there's going to be 100 expand in the next round. You know, you can sort of look at those percentages and it'll be likely to be within those for this next round.
And then in answer to
roughly double the amount.
And then in answer to your other question, it's not the technology itself that's, you know, whether it's immersive or not immersive, it's how you're using it and how you're engaging your audience that makes it so in scope or out of scope.
So from what kind of like how I'm interpreting it, the difference between experimental and expand seems to be about like previous work that you've done. But was there anybody who applied for experiment that didn't get it because you felt like they should have done expand, or doesn't not really?
Yeah, please apply for the strand that talks to you. We actually put a little quiz on the website so you can work it out, because we had so many questions about it in the first round, like which strand should I apply for? Because you can only apply for one. So think about what your practice needs, think about where your project's story will be in January, February next year, and where does it meet the funding? Don't try and squeeze it in to fit. Does our funding meet the needs of your project at that point? And are you ready to go and test things with a small audience if you've got enough of an idea to do that? Or is your project pretty solid and it's already there and you just need to move it to the next stage? And, you know, there are people that you can talk to about their projects and, you know, where, you know, what stage they were at. So, I mean, there's some good examples, on the website as well. You can look at those. So, Yeah. Does your project exist yet? Is it out there in the world? Rhetorical question to all of you.
Any other questions from the room? No, or online?
So,
In that case.
I'll be around for a little while after this for the people in the studio. And if you've got questions online, you can email us at info@immersivearts.uk, and we all man that inbox, so we'll try and answer those. Yeah, Ruth mentioned it earlier, and round 2 is now open. It's live. And just to apologise to those who are keeping track, we initially said that round 2 would be coming in spring 2025 for the second round, and that July, and it's July, that's frankly stretching spring, it's quite hot outside. But why that was because we learned so much from the first round, and we took a bit of time to incorporate everything, all the feedback, from everyone involved, and from you, people that told us how the application process was, and all our colleagues that are involved in the process. So we made a few changes to the model for this round 2, and Ruth's going to talk us through the timeline of that.
Great. Michelle, could you bring up the timeline on the screen? Thank you very much. So, yeah, just as Michelle said, we have refined the process, but the structure, of the 3 funding strands, has remained the same. The response to that from artists seemed to that it was meeting, artists where they were in terms of their development with immersive technologies. And as I said before, there'll be roughly double the amount of awards made in this round. As I said, we're pulling forward some of the funds. We had initially planned to have 3 rounds, but looking at the timelines and the volume of applications, we thought it was best to pull that forward and do more awards in this round to, support artists rather than having people apply, 2 or 3 times to the same fund. So as we said, the funding is now open, and it's opened until Monday, the 29th of September. So the deadline is 2 p.m. that day. Between now and then, we've a range of events like this that we're doing around the UK, and we'll be doing some in real life events in August and September. So do look out for those coming up. We'll be announcing those at the start of August. And the best way to follow that is to sign up to our newsletter on the website. So do that if you're interested in coming along and meeting some of the team. The awards will be announced in January, so we'll be reviewing those in the winter period from the end of September onwards, and aiming to make notifications in January, and then projects beginning from February onwards.
So I think that's more or less everything, isn't it? Just to wrap up and say thank you, or diolch. Have I said that right? I'm really bad at Welsh. Yeah, I've obviously got a long way to go on the Welsh, so I've got an opportunity now to do that. Like I said, I'll be around in the studio for questions, but thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Michelle and Ruth. Before you all go, please remember this is the last talk of the summer. We'll be back in September with a new lineup of talks. Please don't turn up next Friday. If you want to stick around in Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, then please come find one of the studio team and we'll be happy to help. Studio team, give us a wave. You too, Michelle.
Sorry.
Nobody's waving. Thanks, Kat. We are here.
Yeah.
If you're watching online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you again in September.